don't mean to get political, but I'd love to hear Vivek's thoughts on the border skirmishes, clashes between China and India that started around 2020.
Okay. What do I think about? So it's all about, again, I've kind of said it earlier. It's somewhere in the nature of human beings to kind of judge, the baseline. The judgment starts with a sense of insecurity. This is mine, that is yours. 2000 years ago, it was like this. 200 years back, this was mine, that was yours, etc., etc., etc. Human beings living at a lower sense of consciousness, dividing themselves into various penny packets and fighting with each other, right? And deploying their highest capability, their highest sense of potential, which is coming out of insecurity. That is why it is so lethal, why it's so deadly, and why it is so distasteful, right? Where it's just distasteful. Just imagine, like, you and me, we're just regular human beings, right? You feel hungry, you feel the need for happiness, you feel the need for love, you feel the need to be with your family, you feel to do something meaningful in your life. When you're on your deathbed, it won't make a tack of a difference to you whether you are at the end of life. All of these things don't make any sense. Since they don't make sense at the end of life, when you have clarity that you're going to go away now, they shouldn't be making sense while you're living. So now when you translate that into simple thing, what do I think about it? I think it is in the nature of human beings, in any form of consciousness, be it at identification with a religion, identification with a state, identification with a nation, identification with a particular racial group or whatever, is a limitation. And all of these limitations, the greater their expression of limitations are, the higher the destructive potential of it is. Ultimately, it's a game. It's a game in which you see these players playing out their various parts. That's how I see things, personally speaking. Can India and China really afford to go to war? I don't think so. I don't think anybody can afford to go to war really go to war in today's day and age. Right? Especially big markets, especially neighbors, India and China. It's like one body, and wearing a shirt and a trouser, right? And the shirt is telling the trouser that, I'm better than you, and the trouser is telling the shirt, I'm better than you. But actually, they need to be together, right? So ultimately, these are just, little games being played by big gods, Yeah. So that's what I think about it. How is it going to play out? These things, it'll be foolish to try and predict how these things play out. I understand why they are so, right? I understand why it is so, why these things are there, but that's the way of the world, where you find your differences and you create an experience of life. I feel very disappointed when I look at the world today, and I just feel that, having been there on that side, having understood what it means to destroy people, to destroy things, what it actually means, rather than sitting and commenting on a LinkedIn or an Instagram, or there's so many people who have never fucking been there, and they talk about you will hear them shouting the loudest, right, about battles and wars and who's superior and who's inferior and things like that. So in my personal opinion, the world will play itself out. India and China, I'm sure it's never going to translate into a war. We can't be that stupid as human beings that we, two superpowers fucking destroy each other. I mean, everybody will perish, right? So nobody's going to allow that to happen in any case. And today's wars are hybrid wars. They're interdimensional wars, right? Wars are no more being fought limited to battlefields. They're fought across all dimensions, right? They are fought at a perceptual level. There's a lot of posturing which happens. It happens physically at certain levels that we are seeing at various hotspots around the world. They happen in the economic arena, in the business arena, and in the corporate world, and all these, in the stock market, etc., etc., etc. It's just a valuation game, at the end of the day. So,
Any other
that's
questions?
what I
Danny, thanks again. Does the Indian military incorporate any Eastern spiritualistic practices such as mindfulness, meditation in the training?
Okay, so if you look back into the history of India, right? If you look back into the history of India, all of these what are called Eastern practices, right? All of these are actually spiritual practices or spiritual sciences, the science of being a human being, living at his highest potential, right? So meditation, understanding the nature of duality, nature of the world itself, nature of our existence, all of these things have been written thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago in our spiritual text called the Vedas, right down to subatomic levels and right down to there's something called Advait Vedanta, the science of non-duality, right? So all of these things are pearls of wisdom, pearls of real reality, which have been decoded thousands and thousands and thousands of years back, where science is just arriving and saying, yes, the universe the multiverse, it's a multiverse and it's holographic, and there are many more dimensions than the dimensions that our senses are able to perceive. All of that is coming out in science now, and specifically in quantum physics and all of that, right? So yes, our very nature is dipped in this spiritual outlook towards life, and we follow meditation, we follow yogic practices, and we have a certain it also translates into our mindset of how we look at combat itself. So we are not an aggressive nation. We don't look at going to aggressive, and in a way we are how should I say, we don't operate on insecurity. We don't operate on this thing that somebody might overpower us tomorrow, or somebody might conquer us tomorrow, or somebody might do this or destroy us or weaken us or things like that. We have an immense sense of self-belief within our forces, at least, and also within the government now, and it's all this kind of coming together. It's like a full circle happening, right? So and the very basis of our perception of our world around us, as individual soldiers, as a military, as the armed forces, as the government, is the origin of it is spiritual in nature.
Mm-hmm. That actually,
expression of it, yeah.
I'm sorry, because that actually leads. Danny asked another question, and I think this kind of leads into it. You talked about the Vedas a bit, but he asked about the Bhagavad Gita. Do you liken your military career to that of Arjuna fulfilling his dharma, in the Bhagavad Gita? Is that, and not just for you personally, but is that a theme sort of in the Indian military, the idea of dharma, that it's a duty or a...
Yes, we are firstly we are a protective force. Mm-hmm. We are not the need for aggression. We are able to be aggressive, but it is ultimately to protect what is ours and what is within, right? Mm-hmm. To protect the natural resources of our nation, protect the people, the human beings that live in our nation, the children that are growing up and affording a certain sense of stability to the society that lies within the borders, right? Within the protective shield of the armed forces, right? So that people can go to school, educate themselves, people can have access to services like hospitals and things like that, and have a peaceful existence, in this geographical area, so that we can move towards realizing our higher self. So yes, India, largely speaking, everybody has their problems. It's not a perfect world, and good thing it's not a perfect world. Mm-hmm. If it were a perfect world, we'd have nothing to do, right? So the source of it, even though there's been a de-link and all of this is just my opinion, my perception as a common man, right? I'm not a very educated person in the sense that I've read a lot of, geopolitics, or I've, surfed the internet to understand, who's greater than who, or who's fighting whom and for what reasons. I don't really spend too much of time doing that. My hands are full with what I'm doing right now. So, but what I have understood is that there will always, for human experience to exist, there has to be duality, right? Our experience happens within the framework of duality. So there will always be winners and losers, and there will always be, joys and sorrows. There'll always be good and evil and things like that. And within that spectrum, we will find our expression. And ultimately, it's about learning to live together and uniting our specialities. All human beings are unique, right? What people don't understand is a very simple thing. Like, for example, Jack, right? In the history of humanity and in the eternity of time in the future, let's say we have an eternal future in front of us as human beings. In this entire expanse of time, history of humanity till the eternity of the future, there never ever has been a Jack Murphy who was born, who looked like you, talked like you, thought like you, had the same experiences like you ever before, and will never ever happen again.
Some people are grateful for that, Vivek.
That's only because you don't have an OnlyFans.
Okay. So essentially speaking, our very existence in India, our very existence is rooted in spirituality. It's rooted in it. That is our origin, that is our source, and that is the origin, or that is the source from which our expressions come out. There is a long way to go to go back to a full expression, and but then the journey is the reason, right? So
any other questions?
Actually, D, were there any Patreon questions?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. Vivek, any final words that you'd like to leave the audience with? And please let us know where folks can find you, where they can find Claw, people who want to get involved.
Okay. First things first, I would like to, I've spoken about Operation Blue Freedom, the Triple World Records, where the vision is people with disabilities coming from around the world, across all these social barriers, and former military veterans, special forces soldiers, specialized in skydiving, scuba diving, mountaineering, coming together from around the world. If there is any veteran who feels that, this is something that, this is a journey that interests him, that he would like to know more and probably walk with us on it, most welcome. You can visit us on claw.global, CLAW.global. So CLAW is basically Conquer Land, Air, Water. That's like the full name of it. And you can come out and explore what we are doing more. And if it makes sense to you, just drop in a mail and we'll take it ahead from there. That's one. The second thing is from a common man's point of view, just a human being who is existing now and may not exist in the future. So it's a simple sharing that it's a very, very small infinite life that we live. Very, very small. It's like a flash in the pan, right? So compared to the whole of human existence and all the human beings that have existed and who will exist in the future, you are just I'm just a flash in the pan. But make that flash in the pan, worth your while.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And the way to doing that is to rid your own brain, rid yourself of judgment. Rid yourself of judgment of the outside world, rid yourself of judgment of your own self. Just let yourself be and let yourself come out. If you let yourself be, and if you're driven by your heart, you will find the full expression of your flash in the pan. So that's it.
Vivek, yes, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So Soul of Steel. So at the end of the day, Soul of Steel is about, again, showcasing military veterans' skill sets and mindsets being applied and repurposed and focused at developing a sense of security, a sense of skill and ability in the larger population in the world outside. We have something as special forces veterans, as military veterans, we have a certain advantage compared to other professions. The advantage is this, that we have since we have constantly over extended periods of time living in the now, and in the now where you can perish any moment. So what happens is, when you constantly live like that, the meaning of life, the preciousness of life itself starts, expanding, and the realization happens. So sharing these skill sets with the world outside at large will create a sense of self-belief and ability in the general world outside. I think that's where military veterans have a very priceless role to play in the larger society of this world. Forget about boundaries, forget about nations and countries and insecurities and who's greater and who's smaller. But just as military veterans, since we have this advantage of having realized so much of life through real experiences of life and death, and really understanding what it means to be alive and to breathe and to be able to do something, right? So since we are in that position of realization, of that position of having ability and skill set and a mindset that even the worst of circumstances, we'll always see that ray of light rather than the darkness around us, right? So if we share this with the world outside, with people who are not as fortunate to have gone through the experiences that we have gone through, to realize the things that we have realized, to realize the sense of self-belief that we have within, it's the greatest thing that a military veteran can do, is to share his abilities and his thought process and his spirit and his energy towards creation and towards, divide and rule or unite and evolve. So the question is very the what's on the table is very clear. So anybody who would want to associate with us any which way, if you want to come in and compete in Soul of Steel, you want to come in as a training team in Soul of Steel, you want to share your skill sets, you want to interact more with Clawglobal, you want to understand what we are doing and why we are doing it, you're most welcome. And see you on the other side.
Vivek, thank you so much for sharing your journey and your vision with us, man. And I think it's really important, and I'm glad, and I hope that a lot of people will hear it.
It's I don't know. It's really, I'm really grateful and thankful for opportunities like this, where where we are able to share how we feel and we think with other people around us. And this is, I think, the first time I'm speaking on an international platform, right, outside my own country, and I'm able to, through this opportunity that you have created, that you have thought of, right? It's discussions like this is which open up so many windows of perception that other people didn't know existed, and makes the world a little better place than before we started an hour and a half ago.